Hey, what's up? Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time here, I'm Chaves, and if you are returning, thank you for coming back. In today's video, we're going to be covering how to play Disney Lorcana, and stick around to the end for an exciting new announcement. Before we dive into how to play the game, we're going to cover the different types of cards, the layout of the cards, and how to build a deck. In Disney Lorcana, there are 3 different types of cards: characters, items, and actions. There's another type of action that we'll discuss later called songs. On each card in the top left-hand corner, you'll see a number inside of a gold hexagon displaying how much ink it'll cost to play the card. If the cost and hexagon are surrounded by a gold flourish, that means you could play the card as an ink and add it to your Inkwell. Towards the middle of the card, you'll see the name of the card, and for characters, you'll see classifications, strength, and willpower. Strength is how much damage the character deals during a challenge, and willpower is how much damage it takes to banish that character from play. At the bottom of the card, this is where you will find the effects and abilities of the card, and for characters is where you will locate the lore value. We'll go over abilities and effects in detail in another video. The goal of Disney Lorcana is to be the first player to gain 20 or more lore. To gain lore, you'll have to quest with your characters, which we'll discuss later in this video. You can use characters to challenge your opponent's characters or quest for lore. Items are permanently in play unless your opponent removes them, and they also give you special abilities to use during the game. Actions are one-time use cards that help give you an advantage and then are discarded. While you could spend ink to cast an action, there are actions labeled as songs, which allow you to exert a character that costs the same or more than the cost to play that action. Next, we'll go over how to build a deck. When building a deck, there are a couple rules that you must follow. There are 6 inks in Disney Lorcana. There's Amber, Amethyst, Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire, and Steel. Your deck can only contain cards from 1 or 2 inks. Your deck must have at least 60 cards in it and cannot contain more than 4 copies of any single card. For example, if you were running a Ruby Amethyst deck, you could have 4 Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor and 4 Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer. At the start of the game, you will shuffle your deck, set your lore tracker to 0, and draw 7 cards for your starting hand. You're allowed to alter your starting hand at the beginning of the game. To do this, put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck without revealing them. Then draw cards until your hand has 7 cards again, and then shuffle your deck. At this point, you and your opponent can determine who goes first. Each turn is divided into 2 parts, and each player takes their whole turn before passing it to the next player. The first part is the beginning phase, where you will ready your exerted cards by turning them upright, check for effects that happen at the start of your turn and follow their instructions, and then draw a card from the top of your deck. The first player skips this on their first turn. The second part is called the main phase. Once per turn, you can put a card face down into your Inkwell at any time. Additionally, you can take any of the following actions any number of times in any order you want. You can play a card, use a character ability that doesn't require them to exert, use an item ability, take an action with the character that's been in play since the start of your turn. These include questing, challenging an opponent's exerted character, or using an ability that requires them to exert. Let's go over what the Inkwell is. Your Inkwell is where you'll put your ink cards face down, and you'll use these cards in your Inkwell to pay the cost of cards to play from your hand. You can put a card from your hand into your Inkwell once per turn. When you put the card into your Inkwell, it must have the gold flourish around the cost in the upper left corner. The more ink cards you have, the more you'll be able to do. To put a card in your Inkwell, show the card to your opponents and then put it face down in your Inkwell as ink. Every card in your Inkwell represents 1 ink, no matter what's on the front. In order to play a card, look at the ink cost of the card in the top left corner in the hexagon. You must exert that many cards in your Inkwell in order to play it. When you play a character card for the first time, you put it on the table in the ready position, but you cannot do anything with them until your next turn. You need to wait for their ink to dry. Unlike character cards, when you play an item card, you can use it right away. When you play an action card, do what the card tells you to do, and then put the card into your discard pile face up. Quest with one of your characters, exert them, and gain lore equal to the lore value shown on their card. This example will quest with Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer. We will exert him and gain 2 lore as shown on his card. Your characters can challenge your opponent's characters as well, but only if they're exerted. To do this, exert your character to challenge another character. Both characters in this challenge will deal damage to each other. We'll look at the strength and willpower on both characters and place appropriate damage counters. If a character's strength is greater than their opponent's willpower, their opponent is then banished. Damage done to a character will stay with them until an effect removes them or that character is banished. Many items and characters have abilities, and you can only use these during your turn. A card ability has a cost. You must pay that before you can use the ability. An example for an ability that you can use during your turn would be Dinglehopper. I will exert Dinglehopper to remove 1 damage from a chosen character. This can only be done during my turn. Well, that's everything you need to know for how to play Disney Lorcana. As I mentioned earlier, I will have another video up shortly going over the abilities, effects, and keywords labeled on cards. I will also be starting a new series on my channel where I will be looking for hidden Mickeys in each card as mentioned at Gamma. Well, until next time, thank you for coming to the channel, and I'll see you guys around.